Getting 12 nines at GCSE was not all about the endless hours of studying that many people think are necessary to get those grades. Instead, it was quite the opposite. It was learning how to prioritize your time and your subjects effectively so you make every minute that you want to spend working, you're making all of those minutes count. There's this massive misconception and overgeneralization that the more work you put in, the better grade you'll get. Well, that's true in most circumstances. If you start doing pointless and unnecessary work, that work won't lead you towards the results that you really want. So that's what this video is for. I'm going to be showing you how I focused on the things that really did matter to get me the results, but to also avoid the things that I knew wouldn't actually get me those results as well. And that's a really important point because now you can start to structure your routine and your revision around the things that will help you get the grades that you do really want. So where do we begin? Especially for me, if I was doing this from scratch in year 11, so a couple of years ago now, I would have seen, oh, I've got 12 subjects or 12 lots of exams to revise for, and that would be instant panic. I tried many things to try and split up these subjects and organize my time in a very clever way. But what it ultimately came down to was focusing on the subjects which I found harder and avoiding the ones that I found a lot easier. And this idea of organizing your revision quite smartly every week is something that you can do now and once only in 10 minutes. So in the remainder of this video, I'm going to show you how to do that. The first thing you need to do is to list out every single subject that you're going to take an exam for in the summer. And from there, you can do one of two things. You can split them up into a category of easy and hard, or you can rank your subjects from 1 to 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, however many subjects you have in order of difficulty, where 1 is the hardest and your bottom number is the easiest. How I used to organize my revision per week was by pairing these subjects together. So let's say you got the hard category and the easy category, and you say, oh, maths and English are the hardest and physics and chemistry are the easiest. When you pair these subjects together, you will say, whenever I revise maths or I revise English, I will also do a bit of physics or chemistry. So let's say in the example that I had English and physics in a pair and maths and chemistry in a pair. On a weekday that you allocated to these subjects, you would revise maths and you would revise chemistry. So you've got an easier subject and a harder subject together on the same day. For my 12 subjects, I only had 5 pairs because I had maths and further maths, and I had English lit and English language, which I also paired together as well. So I had my 5 pairs, and there was a subject that I found particularly difficult. I found English extremely hard at GCSE, but I found maths easiest. I didn't even bother revising for my maths GCSE. So I put those subjects together, and the amount of pairs I had 5, I'd put them on each day of the week. So let's say, oh, I actually had my maths and English on a Wednesday, but let's say I found physics really hard and I found biology really easy. I put physics and biology on Monday. Then I had chemistry and something else on a Tuesday, English and maths on a Wednesday. I had a hard subject every single day and I had an easy subject every single day. At the moment, you're probably just trying to do what I say, but don't really understand the reason behind this. The reason why I did this was so that I can, if necessary, spend more time on the harder subjects. Because I had a subject that I found easier every single day, that meant I wouldn't do as much work or revision for it. And if I needed to spend more time on that harder subject, like on a Wednesday when I had maths and English, if I needed to spend more time on English because I found it more difficult, I have the freedom to do so because I'll do less maths revision, and that's perfectly fine. In the beginning, I only ever allocated myself an hour per subject on a weekday, and that of course wouldn't have to be an hour per subject strictly. It could be 2 hours for English and 0 for maths, or 1.5 for English and half an hour for maths. I would spend more time on the harder subjects. There is no need to do equal revision per subject, and that's a myth that really needs to be dispelled. People may often think that, oh, I feel productive doing work on easier things, but doing work on easier things won't get you better results, and that's what I was alluding to in the intro. The more work you do doesn't necessarily mean the better grade you'll get. Maybe you'll get a 9 in maths if you find that really, really easy, but if you do more work on maths, what's the point? Because you won't ever need to get higher than a 9. So instead, I focused on English. I did an hour and a half compared to maybe 30 or probably even 10 to 15 minutes on maths. And that's what helped me ultimately get those grades. I wasn't doing well in English at the time, but come the time of my exam, because I had done so much work instead of doing maths, I got the grades that I really did want. I got 2 9s eventually in those exams. There is no need to do equal revision per subject. Do more work on things that you find harder and do less work on the things that you find easier. That should really be common sense, but it's quite difficult to apply. So that's why I've given you this way of pairing subjects together, spending more time on the hard ones, less time on the easy ones. That's how you should go about your revision if you have maybe 8 to 12 subjects for GCSE. But notice how I've only ever spoken about weekdays in this pairing scenario. What should you do on the weekends? I've specifically and purposefully left the weekends free to give you a bit of subject freedom. The way that I actually structured my time on the weekends was I spent my mornings working and the afternoons doing whatever I want and maybe homework if I didn't complete it in the morning. So I'd wake up about 6, 6:30, start working at about 11 to 12, and then from there my afternoons were completely free. So how did I spend those 4, maybe 5 hours on the weekends working? How do I spend those hours effectively? I often found that I didn't have enough time to do all the revision I wanted to do for certain subjects, like English or maybe history on the weekdays. And so I allocated some extra time to those things on the weekends. But then again, I also had small in-class tests in school, so I actually had to go and revise for those as well. But I also wanted to do some past papers for the sciences and some for maths and revise French on top of that too. So I had a lot of stuff that I couldn't do on the weekdays that I had to put in on the weekends, but I didn't really know how to do that at first. And I kept getting quite overloaded with the amount of work that I did want to do versus how much work I could actually feasibly do on a weekend. So what I did was I split my work into 3 different categories: revision for my actual GCSEs, revision for my in-class tests or whatever school sets, and homework. So these are pretty much the only things you'll ever get in the lead up to your exams. Once you realize what task fits under what category, then you can more easily organize these tasks. I would always put my school revision first, then I put my GCSE revision afterwards, then my homework last, because I put it in order of priority. Exams are the big umbrella term here. If I've got an exam sooner in school, I'll do work for that first. I've got exams later, my GCSEs in a couple months, I'll do work for that after. And homework, it could be revision, but it could also be tasks that your teachers do set to complete from school. And that's the least important thing, although it's quite urgent for the next week. I want to specifically focus on your GCSE revision now in that slot that you do give yourself in the morning. What should you actually be spending your time on? In my opinion, it should be on the harder subjects. Some subjects genuinely just take more time. English and history took more time for me, and that's why I spent a lot more time on those on the weekends compared to anything else. But there was also time that because I had so much to do at school, I couldn't fit in any extra revision. But the thing is, school were indirectly helping you by setting you in-class tests or small revision papers or whatever for the following week. You're actually indirectly revising content, or maybe directly revising content that you wouldn't have previously imagined to revise at that time. So this is why this routine and this idea of ordering a work is very flexible and very adaptable to your demands at school. School are trying to help you revise, and by setting different amounts of work or different papers or mini tests or whatever, they're trying to help you get the grades that you do want by just making you or giving you a reason to revise and giving you a little bit of urgency to do so as well. And the final quite important thing is to learn how to prioritize within a subject. But the thing is, it is very, very similar to how we organize our subjects at the beginning. What you need to do is to take a look at what this subject entails. So by looking at the specification, then ranking the topics within that subject. It's very, very similar to what we did earlier. We looked at our subjects as a whole, then ranked them between what we found easiest and what we found hardest. We're going to be doing the same thing within every single subject as well. This is where it gets a little bit different. We're not going to be pairing the topics together because that's a little bit weird. In fact, you probably could if you looked at interleaving your practice. But for the sake of this video, we're going to be starting with the hardest topic, understanding that properly, moving on to the next hardest, understanding that, until you've pretty much understood every single piece of content within that spec. The way you do go about understanding different pieces of content is just trying to learn it and explain it to yourself properly. This is a version of the protege effect. This effect is all about you learn something better when you can explain it or teach it to someone else. And that someone else that I found personally could simply just be yourself. The moment that you can write down a question or a statement and unpick it and understand it fully by looking at your textbook, your school notes, watching YouTube videos on it, that's when you've understood it fully. If you can answer any single question, then your understanding is pretty much complete on that topic. If there are bits that you didn't understand well or that you just want to make reference to in the future, make notes on those topics. So starting with the hardest, make a few notes. Next hardest, continue to make notes till you get to the easiest where you don't really feel the need to make those notes. And yeah, that's just a cycle you need to continue doing. It's quite robotic, but it's the way that really does work, and it's the way to get through the most amount of content in the quickest amount of time. The bottom line is you need to be focusing on things that will directly give you results. This process doesn't really take a lot of time as well. You need to start with the subject pairs that we spoke about earlier. Then we need to go through every single subject, thinking about the hardest, the next hardest, ranking all the topics within that subject, then go about making notes for every single one. This is how I started my revision, and this is how I've been doing it ever since. Prioritizing the things that I find hard, not doing the things that I find easier, maybe looking at those easier things a bit later on down the line. But for the moment, focusing on those hard things, because understanding those and answering questions on those will probably get you the best marks in your exams. So yeah, if you did find this video useful, I've got a very big Discord down below in my description for the very like-minded and hardworking people. If you want to connect with those types of people, then that's down below in my description. But before then, I'll see you in the next video.